call it drama. I think it's interesting, actually. Some stories coming out of the Sixers situation. They had a team meeting on Monday that was following the loss there to the Miami Heat. It was about an hour long, which made everybody late. Journalists hanging out, waiting on it. It was their fourth consecutive loss. And reportedly in this meeting, Maxey challenged Embiid. That's right, to be on time for all team activities moving forward, saying he was, quote, late for everything and that it impacts the locker room. I love this. But Chandler, I don't know. Do you love this?
I mean, no, of course you don't love this because when you look at this team, Joel Embiid is their best player, and that which usually means he should be their leader. And so when you hear something like this, and I don't know Tyrese Maxey at all, but he seems like a very happy-go-lucky type of dude who really made that leap last year, who clearly is now in this leader role. But this is disappointing. This is true. It's one thing to be hurt. It's one thing not to be available. But as a leader, you lead always, and you lead in the most important times or when your team is struggling, when your team is losing. So he's right. If Joel is being late, if he's not coming to the shoot arounds or late to film, all that stuff adds up and that adds up. And then you start having this animosity towards the coaching staff when they don't say anything to him or they coach him differently than everybody else. From the 12th man to the first man, there's got to be a balance. Everybody's got to be on the same page. So this is just not a good situation. First of all, I'd love to know how it got out.
There it is.
That's also another issue because there's a lot of things that need to stay in-house. But listen, being a leader isn't just the best team. That's organizing team dinners. That's putting up shots afterwards. It's watching films with the young guys. And most importantly, that's being on time and leading by example, whether you're playing or not. So it's not a good thing for sure. I hate it for the team. I hate it for Joel. I hate it for Nick Nurse and this whole franchise. This is a team that was going into this season with all these expectations to compete for a championship. And now it's just when it rains, it pours. You just keep getting this bad news, bad news. I love that the fact that Maxey is challenging him and kind of taking that role as, look, you're not available right now. This is my team. He has the right, I believe, to do that. Anybody does. If any of the guys 1 through 12 are being late every single day, that's not okay. So it's a bigger issue here, of why it's happening, but it's also a huge issue of how something like this even gets out.
I think
Yeah.
when I say I love it, I love the idea that like a fire has been lit and it's coming from a young leader in the locker room. Maybe that's what I meant, but the getting out of it all is always fascinating to me. As a team, do you look around, Lou? Like if something gets out, are you guys like somebody in here is a rat? Like, how does it work?
Absolutely. You look at everybody when you have these meetings, when you have these closed door meetings, usually it's the coaching staff and it's the players and everybody is kind of getting things off of their chest. And, whether it's somebody that gets on the phone and gossips with their homeboys or their wife or something. And, those people are considered sources and, they have the relationships with the Shams of the world and they leak information. That's how these things get out. Listen, it's like anywhere else. If you hear some juicy gossip, you want to tell somebody what you heard. You want to let somebody in on an experience. And sometimes that creates leaks within your organization and your locker room when you're having these conversations. And coincidentally, I can give you guys an inside scoop on this thing because one way or another, I ended up on the phone with a few of the guys from the 76ers. And by all accounts, this was kind of blown out of proportion. The idea of Tyrese calling Joel out and how it's been portrayed in the media as, one of these type of blow up things. From my understanding, they just had a conversation on accountability, just keeping everybody in check. And sometimes you got to have that as a team, just making sure we all on the same page. Hey, bro, we understand you're not going to play in these games, but, team meetings and all of that is important for you to be there. It's important for you to be there on time. So from my understanding, that was the nature of the conversation. That was the context of a conversation. It wasn't as much of Tyrese Maxey challenging Joel Embiid as has been stated. It wasn't a conversation about accountability. By all accounts, those guys are doing just fine. They were sitting next to each other when we were on the phone, laughing and giggling and having a good time and trying to get this team back on the same page. And so that, from what I understand, that was the context of the conversation, not as much of the negative stuff that's trying to come out at this point.
I will say, just from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like a personality trait that Tyrese Maxey would just jump Joel Embiid out of nowhere.
No.
he's going through, knowing that he's actually hurt, probably more so than the media and the fan base actually knows in Philadelphia. So I do think it's a good thing that, listen, there's no, there's no secrets there. They're all holding each other accountable. It's just there's certain things, there's certain call outs, there's certain team meetings that need to stay in house. And look, I know Shams is good at his job, but this is unacceptable. This needs to stay in house. This needs to be between those guys, because those are the guys who are going to have to figure this out. No one else, not the media, not the fans, not even the coaches. It's those players in between those lines. So I love the idea that they're holding each other accountable. I love the idea that they're even pushing each other. But this is no way, I mean, a good thing for them moving forward, because now I'd be wondering, how did this get out? Who said something and all that?
Oh, well, that part would make me paranoid.
Right. Well, the first thing that happened, Nick Nurse announced after the Heat game that they were going to have a team meeting. So I think that alone put everybody on just awareness of them having a meeting. And then, obviously after that, everybody's curious what's being said behind closed doors. And so, like I said, from speaking with them guys to what's came out in the media, the context was completely different. The tone was completely different. It wasn't like those guys were button heads or anything like that. When you're a 2-11 basketball team, you have to have a closed door meeting, and you got to get on the same page and make sure everybody goals are still in line, and make sure the morale and everything like that is up in that locker room. Even though we've had our criticisms of this team so far, they're still in a position where they can string 4 or 5 games together and make something shake and make something happen for themselves. We're on the outside looking in. And our job is to give our opinions on, what we see out on the basketball court. Chandler and I said they may be cooked for this season. The Philadelphia 76ers, they see it differently, and that starts with communication and accountability. So by all accounts, I think that's the only thing that conversation was about.
I like it because I feel like this could be galvanizing. I know Embiid, he's kind of mad at the talking heads, and he had that moment with the fans, and he's not thrilled. And how could you be? The team's in a weird spot. This could be a really good sort of us against the world moment. Maybe. I don't know. I took all positives from it, although despite the rat aspect, obviously nobody wants a rat amongst them. But they also, in this meeting, apparently told Nick Nurse that they want to be coached harder, Chandler. And I'd love to know what exactly that means.
Yeah, this to me is the worst thing that you can hear as a coach. As a coach, you have to set the tone. You have to set every single foundation piece of that franchise the moment you get the job. And that's from everyone's attitude, everyone's energy, from shoot-arounds, from community events to practice to everything leading up to it. So that is on Nick Nurse. What I took from this is coach the 12th man like you coach Joel. Keep it balanced. That to me is when like I played with Kevin, when I played for Kevin McHale. He would jump James Harden, whether that was a private conversation beforehand or not, or not. He would jump him just as hard as he would jump a rookie. And it almost made everybody buy in. It got everybody's respect. So to me, I don't know if this is a thing about he's coaching certain people harder. He's letting certain people get away with certain things, being late, being, not punctual to certain events. That I don't know, but you never want to hear, 15, 20 games into a season that your team is the one asking to be coached harder. That is not an ideal situation, and that no player also ever wants to feel like they're a coach's whipping boy, where like they're just going off on one dude. Or every coach usually has that one guy he loves to take everything out on. I don't know every detail on this situation, but to me, when you're a coach, you have to balance it. You have to coach 1 through 15 the same, no matter the stardom level of the player to a player's rookie year. It's got to be balanced, or else that's how you create this animosity, this jealousy, this bad culture in a locker room. So this is the worst part of it to me, because the coach should already be coaching them as hard and as best to his ability as possible.
Yeah, I'm agree with Chandler. Yeah, I agree with Chandler on this. And, I can speak directly about Nick Nurse. He coached me in Toronto, and, Chandler can attest to this. We have a term called a player's coach. Nick Nurse will be what you consider a player's coach. He's one of those type of guys. It's important for him to have good relationships, good rapport with his guys, from the first man to the 12th man. And sometimes they can get taken as soft or not coaching us hard enough when you're going in and out of your way to try to please players. That's who Nick Nurse is. He's one of those guys. He's going to communicate with you. He's going to ask you questions. When some coaches, hey, listen, it's my way or the highway. If you don't like it, ask for a trade. Get out of here. This is how we're doing things. Nick Nurse, to me, you know, in my experience, he's one of those collaborative coaches where he's going to ask questions, where he's going to ask you about your concerns. He's going to see if you guys can get on the same page communication-wise to accomplish things. And, you know, the 76ers, they're probably in a space, hey, look, at 2-11, we can't afford that right now. We can't afford you asking us questions or tiptoeing around feelings. Like I said, that conversation yesterday was all about accountability. So these guys are asking, hey, man, from top guy to the bottom guy, make sure we're being held accountable and make sure we're doing our jobs to get this thing back on the right page. And so I think that's the context of this thing, in my opinion, with Nick Nurse and just working with him and being around him. He's that type of coach.
And by the way, a lot of this stuff happens on every single team. Not every team is just 2-11 championship expectations. Everything gets exposed when you're losing. So this team,
it just gets highlighted when you're losing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just exposed right now because they're losing. Their best player is hurt. He's at it with the media. Like this happens in every single locker room. It's just under a magnifying glass when you are the Philadelphia 76ers and you come into this season with championship hopes. And now you're 2-11, looking at a possible #1 pick. Everything is annoying. Everything is frustrating. It's not fun to go to that practice facility right now the next day. Film sessions are brutal. So I think everybody's just kind of on edge, but everything's just exposed when you get off to this bad of a start.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that one. I hope this is the light that turns things around, but we shall see.
Michelle, but what do you do? Like, this big three is together for the foreseeable. No, this big three is together for the foreseeable future, right? Like,
yeah.
Joel Embiid's got to prove he's healthy before you can even trade him. Then if he's healthy, you're not going to want to trade him. Tyrese Maxey's this up and star. They just got Paul George. So this big three is together. So if you're going to make a change, Nick Nurse is the only one that I can see together.
Nope. Can't do it. It's too early. Cannot do that. Got to figure this out. So I'm thinking yesterday, maybe that will be the point. And 2-3 months from now, we'll be like, you know, that meeting back in Miami, that was really a turning point. That's the best case scenario. So we'll see if that happens. We had a big game last night, of course. It was Cavs Celtics.